Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Oles and this is my Module 13, my case study for EDL 851, A Good Teacher Turns Bad. So there's a problem, and here's what I know. So we have Crestview Elementary School. It's a rural school, a little bit declining attendance. We have Miss Wilson, who is one of the main players. She's a well-respected principal. This is her third year being a principal. We have Miss Horton, who is a very well-respected first grade teacher. She won some awards. She was a great teacher by all accounts for a very long time. And then we'll get to what the issue is. Miss Horton apparently is having home issues. She's getting a divorce. I believe her husband moved out. She's trying to raise some teenagers on her own. Sounds like a tough issue personally. And we're not really sure. It potentially is harming her her job performance. Students and parents are getting a little bit upset. They're complaining. They're complaining to the principal. They're complaining to Miss Horton. They're asking for parent-teacher conferences. They're concerned about the class environment and more specifically the way that Miss Horton is interacting with her students. There's multiple complaints, and they all seem to be about the same. It's that Miss Horton has a short temper. She's getting very angry with the kids, and the way that she's speaking to them doesn't fully sound appropriate, and some of the students and the parents are taking issue with that. The principal tried intervening. The principal, Miss Wilson, has stepped into the class. She's tried to come observe to see if she can substantiate any of these claims. She hasn't been able to at this time. Every time she goes in to observe, everything seems fine. And then one of the other main players is Mr. Stafford. He's the parent of a child in Miss Horton's classroom. He's very upset. He's saying that his daughter is also very upset. She's crying. She doesn't want to go to school. She won't eat. She's having a really hard time with the way that she perceives Miss Horton treating her. So Mr. Stafford is demanding a meeting with Miss Horton and Miss Wilson, and he's also demanding that his daughter be taken out of her class. What do we need to know? Okay, so what I would need to know if I was a little bit closer to the situation, I would need to know, are the parents' concerns justified? Are these things really happening? Is anybody overreacting? I would need to see a little bit more evidence and hopefully see it in person as well. I'd also like to know how often the principal has been in and observed. It was mentioned in the case study that the principal had gone into the classroom and hadn't observed the behaviors. I just want to know, is this, a couple passing attempts for a few minutes, or how many times has she been in the classroom? Also, I'd like to know, are there any adults who have observed this behavior? Are there any aides or paraprofessionals in the room? Is there a special education co-teacher in the room that has seen any of this and can substantiate any of the claims? I'd also like to know, is the issue with this new reading program that has launched? The elementary school has a new reading program. Miss Horton is very vocally against the program, and she has kind of lashed out at some of the other teachers who have supported it. So is the issue surrounding the reading program? She doesn't want to do it, so she's frustrated and upset. Does it have to do with her home life? Or is it probably a combination of the two? I'd also like to know what exactly is happening in the room. Like, what are the words that she is saying? It said that she's yelling at kids. It said that she's having a short temper. I would like to know exactly what she's saying, when she's saying it, who she's saying it to. I would like to know a little bit more about that. I'd also like to know, have other students and parents' concerns been documented? It said other parents have complained. That seems really broad and general. I would hope that the principal would have documented each concern, who it was from, when they complained, and so on and so forth. So my plan of action would be, number one, alert authorities, and I don't mean authorities as in police. I maybe should have reworded that. What I mean is there a dean of students in the school? The dean of students would need to be involved. This is an issue of behavior both of staff and of students. Maybe there's some student behavior that is causing that. I'd like to loop in the dean. I'd also like to alert the superintendent. And this is the important piece that I'll talk about a little bit later too. Is there a plan of action in place? Is there a method of counseling or reprimanding or dealing with a teacher who is having issues and complaints being levied against them? Is there a plan of action that I need to follow? Is there a protocol that the principal needs to follow? Also, if there's any other authority figures in the building, assistant principals, case manager, if there are special education students in the class, anybody else who is of any kind of authority in the school would probably need to be looped in. Second thing, you need to have some meetings. You need to talk this out with some people. The case study stopped when the principal was in a room with Miss Horton. I would like to extend that meeting as well. But if Miss Horton was upset like she was at the end of the meeting with the parent, maybe let her cool off for a little bit. I would like to continue talking to her to see what's going on, see if she would admit to any of these behaviors when she's not so worked up. I'd like to meet with the other parents as well. Other parents who are having concerns, I'd like to loop them in, have a meeting with them, and tell them about the action plan and steps that I'm taking as the principal to solve any of these issues. I would also want to meet, of course, like I said, with any kind of other authority figures in the school, deans, assistant principals, and also you would need to have that meeting with the superintendent to check on the action plan. The third thing, investigate the accusations. I think that there needs to be a little bit more digging into the claims that the students and the parents are making against Miss Horton. Have a dialogue with the parents, ask them exactly what was being said, ask them to document what their kids are saying, and then report that back to the principal. I'd like to also ask, in this investigation, ask any witnesses or potential witnesses if they have seen anything. Is there a teacher next door who's heard it? Are there, like I said, are there other adults that are ever in the room? Maybe there's like an SLP or some other kind of special education service provider that needs to pop in every once in a while. Have they seen anything? Also, I think it's important to, part of the investigation, to talk to Ms. Horton herself, lay out for her all the concerns, all the things that the parents have said specifically, and ask her what she thinks about it and what her side might be. And the last thing here would be a follow through. If these claims are substantiated, and I'm getting the feeling that at least some level they are, because so many parents and students are complaining, there needs to be consequences for Ms. Horton. That's when you would need to talk to the superintendency about an action plan. You would also need to, possibly suspend her, have her step out of the classroom and cool off for a little bit. Whatever the consequences might be, there would need to be consequences if these things are substantiated. Next thing I would do, the parent is adamant, the student is obviously upset, and whether these claims are substantiated or not, the perception of Julie and her parent is that she is being treated not well, to the point that it's making her not want to come to school and possibly physically ill. So real or not, this is the perception of the student. She needs to move. She needs to go into another class. Finally, I would check out any kind of professional development or training or counseling services for Miss Horton. Maybe she needs to go to a PD and learn respectful ways of communicating with students without having to yell, scream, call names, whatever it is that she's doing in her class. How does this resolution promote success? It does it in a couple different ways. It's critical to the environment of trust between the school and parents. The parents need to have trust that if they have concerns, they're going to be dealt with by the school. If a ton of parents are complaining and nothing's being done, there's not going to be that component of trust between the parents or possibly the community and the school. That is super important for the school. And this plan of action promotes this. Also, this plan of action creates or reinforces procedures. If there's not already a procedure in place for dealing with this kind of behavior in the classroom, then you're creating your own procedure, and that would need to be documented for, unfortunately, if something like this happened again. It also creates a better environment in Miss Horton's class. That's super important too. If she comes back from a PD and she's better trained in ways of dealing with and talking to the students, it's going to make that environment better, and that's important as well. What was I thinking during this whole process? I was thinking, should the principal have stepped in more? Of course, I would need to know more about how often the principal was in there. I mean, maybe the principal could have shadowed her for a day or half a day. I'm sure, you know, the principal is super busy, but should the principal have done more to either prevent this from happening through trainings, or after some of these claims came out, to be in the classroom more to help with the situation? I was also thinking, should staff be trained on student and parent interactions? Maybe that's part of like a beginning of the year before kids come in. Maybe there's a training on how to interact with parents, how to interact with students, do's and don'ts. Maybe there's some kind of modeling component where you model how to talk to students and parents. Maybe that should be part of the training for staff. I was also thinking that all parents' concerns should be considered credible. Everything should be, every parent concern should be looked at, investigated, and dealt with, because then you're promoting trust between the parents and the school, which is important. I was feeling frustrated by the change. It seems like Miss Horton seemed like a great teacher, and obviously something is different now. That's frustrating because great teachers are hard to come by, and she was so good that she was winning awards and stuff, and everybody loved her. That's frustrating. I was also feeling angry that the situation had to escalate in the way that it did. It wasn't just a couple parent concerns and then the teacher was dealt with. It escalated into a screaming match between a parent and a teacher, which is very unfortunate. I was also feeling disappointed that it appears that some relationships between parents and the school were damaged. That's very disappointing. In my action plan, I was valuing the learning environment for the students in Ms. Horton's class specifically, but also the greater learning environment of the school. I think some of those negative feelings and thoughts can kind of bleed into the hallways and into the school as a whole. So I think the learning environment must be that every classroom, all the time, there's a relationship of trust and respect that contributes to an environment where kids can learn. I was also valuing community environment with the parents outside of the school. I think promoting that relationship between the parents and the school, having a trusting relationship between them and the school is super important. And I think that my action plan really values that relationship. And I think I was also valuing the integrity of procedures. Whether there's a procedure in place, it needs to be followed, or if there wasn't a procedure in place, there's one that is being created. Unresolved issues or further questions. Things I'd like to know: what training do teachers receive? Do they receive a training like that that I spoke about, like a professional development? Do they receive that? Maybe they already do. But I think that's important. Also, has an event like this occurred before, and how is it dealt with before? Because then you can look at the results. Say something like this happened before, you can look at the results